Ciao a tutti. Fu Massimo Mattioli a parlarmi per primo di uno dei più grandi visionari del cinema contemporaneo, David Cronenberg. Massimo Mattioli lo amava molto, lo amava prima che diventasse così celebrato come è stato finalmente celebrato e riconosciuto in questi termini negli ultimi anni. Ormai Cronenberg ha fatto scuola, il suo rapporto con una bellezza tutta da ridefinire e non convenzionale, non canonica, è diventato leggendario, così come ci sono degli aspetti un po' più segreti e meno noti che abbiamo voluto indagare. L'ho incontrato per noi di lezionidifumetto.it e abbiamo chiacchierato dei fumetti che lui amava nella sua infanzia. Your cinema, this is often defined visionary. How important is the visual aspect, the invention and the artificial in your approach?
Well, one of the first things that I worried about when I was thinking that I would become a filmmaker, a director, was if I had a visual sense, because you don't know if you have one. I mean, I did at one point try to be a cartoonist myself, just as a young boy, but mostly I was a writer, and it was all writing, and so once I started to play with cameras, which I was always very fascinated by, I was thinking, when I'm shooting, will I know when the shot is right or when it is not right? And this is a visual thing, because you're dealing with space. You're cutting up space with movement and faces and of course bodies. I mean, this is, a director works with bodies, you know, this is what we photograph. So I wasn't sure that I would have this visual sense of what was right and wrong, but I gradually realized that yes, when the shot was wrong visually, I felt it here, you know, I felt it in my stomach. It had felt ugly, bad, not good. And when it was good, I have felt great joy, you know, just in the framing. So I thought, okay, I have a visual sense. Now we're not talking about visionary in the sense of prophetic, but just visual. And so for better or worse, I do have a strong visual sense, and I work with my director of photography, with my production designer to realize, you know, whatever I've written or whatever the script is.
This before you shoot, you talk with them to create.
Oh yes, I mean there's much discussion about every detail of if we are creating new things, new devices, or we're just designing a special set, you know. Even if it's an ordinary dining room, there's so many things that go into that. So we discuss that, but I never do storyboards though. I don't do that. There was a time when, about the only time I did storyboards was on the fly, and it was just for the special effects sequences, and it was only because the special effects people were worried that I would ask them to do something that they couldn't do. So they said, in this shot we only see the legs, in this shot we only see the head, you know, we can't show you both at once. And so they wanted to make sure, so for me that was more like a political thing,
okay.
not a, I need to be on the set with the actors, with the real set, and then it's like sculpting. It's I feel it with the actors, how they move. I don't have a preset idea usually of what visually is to control everything. There are some moments when the visual part is so strong, like in the Dead Zone, we're shooting in a tunnel with ice, and it's reflective, and so I know that that is what the scene is. So that's very strong. But usually, if you have three actors in a room and they're doing dialogue, what is the visual strength? It's really the actors and their movement. So it's spontaneous. I'm doing it only with the actors at that moment, and then deciding how to shoot the scene.
And does painting affect the project of your shooting? The painting or cartoons or Do you use references like pictures?
I don't really.
No?
I don't really use references, especially with Peter Sushitsky, who is my director of photography on 11 movies. At first we said, we'll find some modern paintings, some old paintings for the lighting, and then we abandon it. As soon as we start shooting, the reality of the shoot takes over, and all the theoretical aspects, we forget it. And I say, well, this looks too much like a spotlight. The light is too obvious. Let's make it darker. And then we forget about the references. So finally, I don't think we really talk about references anymore.
Okay. And which is your relationship about the so-called realism?
The realism is the reality of your set, That's the reality. I mean, I don't... none of it is real, but it's also very real, I mean, in a strange way. Sometimes people say to me, do you look at your old movies? And do you watch them? And I say, I don't, because for me, I can't see them as a movie. They are like a documentary of what we shot that day. And I remember the actors, and I remember the problems, so it's hard for me to see my movies as a movie. But that's the reality, is what we shot.
Can you tell us about the birth of the movie History of Violence? How did you proceed after reading the comic book?
Well, I know this is going to sound strange, but I didn't read the comic book till after we made the movie. Because what I got was a script based on the comic book, but by a writer who was not the graphic novelist. So I actually didn't look at the comic book until after we shot the movie. So it had an indirect influence, but it wasn't direct. So it actually, strangely enough, you would think if you make a movie of a graphic novel, it should have a strong influence on your visual, but it didn't, because I didn't even see it. In fact, I actually, as I recall, nobody told me that it was based on a graphic novel. I just saw the name of the writer. So that's, yeah.
But I have been told that you were a comic book reader when you were young, and that your relatives allowed you to read comics after dinner. Is it true? Which is your relationship with cartoons?
That's true. I mean, I would read comic books all the time. I had a big comic book collection, but this was really before the graphic novel. This was Little Lulu and Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck and those classic comic books. But then also there was a series of comics called EC Horror.
Yeah, no.
Tales from the Crypt, and I read those, and those were, the parents were very nervous about those because they were very violent, very strong. I didn't read them when I was a very young child, but I did read them, and I had a whole collection of EC Horror comic books. Eventually my mother threw out all my comic books. And of course, they were probably worth $100,000 because they were very valuable.
And there was a problem with the Comics Code Authority, you remember?
That's right. That's right. Now, that was in America, but of course, in Canada, we were influenced by that.
Yeah.
Suddenly, comic books were very bad, But I loved comic books, but they were not graphic novels. They weren't as complex and sophisticated as some graphic novels have become.
And do you think these comic books of E.C. Line influenced your approach to storytelling in cinema?
I have a feeling that they did. I think they did. Now, as you probably know, it's very difficult sometimes to know what is a true influence, or is it a parallel thing, because... but I have a feeling that it did influence my sense of drama and horror narrative and so on. It must have, because they were so strong, and I read them when I was very young.
So the concept of beauty changed from time to time, no? From different epochs. El Greco, the painter who was exposed during a century, and after he was bring out from the museum because they thought it was caricature, so very bad. And after rediscovered the century after and re-exposed in the museums. You have worked not taking care of classical canon. Can you tell me about beauty? What is beauty for you?
Well, I keep surprising myself, you know, when I see something that I'm working with my crew, for example, and I look through what we used to look through the lens, and now we just look at a monitor, and I think this thing, what we've created with the lighting, is beautiful. For some people, it's horrible. So, I mean, I'm talking about cinematic beauty as opposed to beauty in my life, because in my life, I think my understanding of beauty is just normal, you know, è normale. You know, it's like beautiful women, beautiful sunset, beautiful ocean, beautiful trees. I love nature. As a child, I collected insects. I loved insects. I was very interested in animals and nature and so on, and I still am. So that is classic beauty for me. Nature and the body of nature is the basis of all beauty to me. For me, part of the project of cinema is to create a new, unknown beauty that people perhaps would never have thought was beautiful, but then I can show them that it is beautiful. With the movie Crash, for example, you know, it's something that you would normally think was horrible and hideous and violent, and I'm showing you people who find that to be beautiful, and then by the end of the movie, I think I want the audience to have changed their concept of what is beautiful, and I think I do that unconsciously, subconsciously in all my movies, is to create a new kind of beauty, you know, to find different forms of beauty.
Are you afraid of the human body?
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. On the contrary, no. I mean, I'm not afraid of the human body. It's the most fantastic object in the universe. It is. I mean, in fact, scientifically, very objectively, they say the human brain is the most complex object in the entire universe. And I believe that to be true. So for me, the human body, is a source of great joy and also sadness because of the finite, you know, I mean, every philosophy, every religion is dealing with death, you know, dealing with death, which is something that is very difficult for a sentient being like a human being to contemplate non-existence. How can you experience non-existence? And can you be not afraid of it? It's very difficult. So, but no, it's not fear. And that's, I know that some journalist invented the term body horror, but I think that would never come from me, because I don't at all think of the body as horrifying. Not at all. Quite the contrary. So,
you know, the body is the main subject in the history of painting, no? There is always this kind of very persistent presence until the birth of the 20th century and the invention of pictures, of photography.
But it is absolutely the main subject of cinema. I mean, as directors, what are we photographing most? Always the human body. Always. That's our subject.
But you are thrilled by the mutation, the fascination of extreme violence, fear. These are points, very, very strong topics in your cinema.
Yeah, because by some standards, the world is a very violent place. And when you think of Darwin and survival and evolution. You know, evolution is driven by destruction, by murder, basically, even genetically. There was a scientist named Gerald Edelman, who was a Nobel Prize winner, physics, I think, and he said that the brain, the human brain, is not like a computer. It's like a rainforest in which there is a constant struggle for dominance and survival, because our neurons are constantly competing with each other. And so it's not static, it's constantly changing. And I found that fantastic, you know, a fantastic comparison. That's the reality of the world, and even the body. I mean, as we sit here, our brains are working, you know, within themselves as a rainforest. You have a rainforest inside your head.
And so mutation is something that is going to come in your next movies, do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
It's part of your
philosophy. It's not always the subject, of course, but sometimes the movie that I have just shot, Crimes of the Future, is partly about evolution, about my anticipation of a particular kind of evolution. It's a meditation on evolution, in a way. And evolution is a very physical, bodily thing. It's a very organic thing. I mean, you don't have rocks and minerals that mutate, but you have any living creature mutates. That's just part of what it is to be an organic creature.
How do you consider contemporary pop culture? Do you think that are possible new crossovers between cinema and other media, like graphic novel, video games, I don't know?
I think so, yeah. I think there's a great interspersing and interweaving of all media. And with the death of cinema, which I think is happening, cinema as we know it, you know, cinema in the theater. But now it's cinema on your watch, and cinema on your phone, and cinema on your iPad, and cinema in your living room on your TV set. But those are also the venues for social media, for TikTok, for, you know, all of that. So I think it's inevitable that there's a hybridization of all of these media. I'm not on social media myself, but of course I see the power of it and the influence of it, even on filmmaking. So, for example, you watch TV series on Netflix, and almost every show that you see, there's people talking, using their phones and doing Instagram and iMessage and WhatsApp, and you have to find a cinematic way to show that. So sometimes you see the actor going like this, and then over here floating is an image of the phone showing what's on it. You know, so even to that extent, that visual aspect of storytelling was never an issue before, because that didn't exist. Now you have to decide, how do I convey what this person is seeing on the phone? Do I just do a close-up of the phone, or do I have it floating so we see? You know, I've seen some very creative ways of conveying that kind of information. So even to that extent, there's an invasion of social media into cinema.
And your relationship with the actors, when they start shooting with you, do they know the script, the whole script of the movie? You know that Fellini just wrote 1 page and a half.
I know.
Never told about it.
Yeah. I leave that to the actors. Some actors, I mean, I'm an actor myself, you know. So it's a classic thing. The actor says, here's the script. That's not me. No, that's not me. Oh, this is me. My dialogue. Okay, I like that. Next. No, that's not me. Oh, so some actors never read any part of the script that isn't about them. And in a way that's legitimate, because the character doesn't know the whole world of the script. So it's a possible approach for an actor to say, I'm only interested in my character. I can't control the other characters, so I only will read my dialogue, my part of it. And then some actors, like my friend Viggo Mortensen, we've done 4 movies together now, he is not like that because he's a director, a photographer, a poet, a musician. So he likes to have a vision of the whole movie, and he can integrate that into his performance. But I think it's completely legitimate for an actor not to do that. So it's different. But as a director, I don't control that. I send them the whole script, and they can use it however they want to, however they have to use it.
And the strategy, do you use any strategy to make a movie become real? I mean, with producers or actors, do you use tricks? I mean,
of course,
do you lie?
Of course. Oh no, you must be Machiavelli. You must lie and cheat and deceive and betray. It's the only way you get a movie made. It's speaking of rainforest, it is a rainforest of a very violent kind to get financing for your movie. My last movie had 19 entities financing, and they were all struggling with each other. Each one comes with a demand. You know, there's this distributor in this country and a distributor in this country, and they both want different things, and they want different actors. They need to have this star because they can't find, you know. It's I'm not a producer, but when you are a director these days, unless it's a huge Hollywood movie, you are very involved in the financing because you're trying to sell the movie, and it affects your casting too. I mean, I could not get my movie made without some stars. You can't even a low budget movie has to have some kind of star, you know. So it's you have to be. It's street fighting, you know. It's very difficult. You have to be tough. You really do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. This was my best interview.
Thanks. I'm happy.
Se ti è piaciuta questa puntata e ti interessa il corso lezionidifumetto.it, iscriviti al canale. Troverai anche un sito www.lezionidifumetto.it nel quale ci saranno dei pacchetti di approfondimento per ogni singolo punto affrontato in queste lezioni e i link in descrizione per tutto questo. Ciao!